Coming up on the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast, we're going to discuss win now fantasy trades. Are you 0-5, 1-4, and struggling to make a playoff push? Well, tune into this episode. We're going to break down the win now trades you can make using the slot versus wide rest of season schedule starting right now on the Razzball Fantasy YouTube channel. What is up, folks? It's once again Bobby LaMarco here, hosting the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast. Today, I am riding solo. Every single person is done with me. They don't want to do the show. They said, "Bob, fly solo, buddy, because we're done with you." Just kidding. I don't even know if it's true, honestly. But whatever. Today's episode, we're going to be breaking down win now dynasty. I'm so used to saying win now dynasty trades. We're here to break down win now trades that can help you in your redraft leagues. If you're 0-5, 1-4, 2-3, whatever, breaking this down using the slot versus wide tool. And very shortly, we're going to have the rest of season strength of schedule up on the site. But for now, on the back end, I have figured out which wide receivers have the best out wide schedule over the next 5 weeks to help you get back into that playoff push. Before we do, make sure you follow us across the board at Razzball Fantasy on YouTube, IG, and TikTok. And, of course, make sure you jump over to Razzball.com. We have fantastic articles and tools to help you win your fantasy leagues. We have premium projections run by Rudy, dominating the wide receiver rankings. We also have the slot versus wide tool that's helped Ben really skyrocket up the wide receiver ranks on the Fantasy Pros accuracy ranking. We have fantastic tools across the board with the win versus losses split, home versus road. Really fun tools to help you set your lineups every week. So make sure you go check it out over on Razzball.com. All right, let's dive into today. Before we do, I kind of want to talk quickly about some of the takeaways we had last week, because I think it's important to talk a little bit about some of the takeaways that we were promoting and helping us get into some start sits. Now, the first one last week we talked about was sit QBs versus the Falcons. And of course, Baker Mayfield throws 3 touchdowns. But listen, he only threw for 180 yards. I'm going to say to be determined on this one. I don't think Baker Mayfield's performance completely has changed my mind that the Falcons defense is still legit against pass quarterbacks. But we'll see. This week they have Andy Dalton or whatever's going on in Carolina. So I'm not expecting the Panthers passing attack to be elite this matchup. The next takeaway we talked quickly about was start running backs versus the Panthers. This one's kind of obvious. DeAndre Swift completely dominated last week, and this week they get Bijan Robinson. So maybe even Tyler Algier could be a streamer option this week if you have guys by. The third takeaway from last week we discussed was start your RBs versus the Bears. Chuba Hubbard played extremely well. This week they get Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby. So keep an eye on Etienne's injury, but Bigsby could be back on the RB2 map, even as the 1B this week. Next one we talked about was sit tight ends versus the Browns. Yeah, Zach Ertz didn't do too well last week. This week he gets Dallas Goedert off the bye. A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith are both expected to be back. I think the tight end landscape's tough to navigate, but if you can get away from Goddard, not a bad idea there as well. Jumping down to the start quarterbacks versus the Jags. Listen, Joey Flax, baby. Joey Flax. I mean, granted, you could put Joey Flax up against anybody and he's going to dominate. It is what it is. But he played well last week. This week, Caleb Williams can build off his strong performance. Definitely on the streamer map this week. Number 6 was start your QBs versus the Colts. On the flip side, Trevor Lawrence played very well last week. So, Will Levis, the jury's still out on him. Maybe if he starts, maybe if he doesn't, not really sure, but probably not going to start Will Levis. But guys like Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins should put up enough points to be on the wide receiver 3 map. The last one we talked last week was start running backs versus the Raiders. And, of course, Javonte Williams had a very good week last week in PPR, catching 5 passes and playing almost, I think he was an RB1 last week in PPR. So that's fantastic. This week they get Najee Harris. We'll see what Jalen Warren does. Cordell Patterson as well. Both were out last week. We'll see what happens there. But Najee should get a bulk of the work. All right. Now let's talk about some rest of season slot versus wide strength of schedules. Today, honestly, on the back end, if you guys know about our slot versus wide tool, we talk about how many fantasy points a defense allows in the slot versus out wide. This is really, really a cool tool. We have taken fantasy points allowed to another level for wide receivers. Really, really fun tool. We also have how many fantasy points a receiver scores in the slot versus out wide. So go check it out on the fantasy data tab right now. Very shortly, we're going to have rest of season strength of schedule up there as well for slot versus out wide. But I want to talk quickly about some win now trades that you can make in your fantasy leagues based on the next 5 weeks and how good a schedule wide receivers have. Now, the first one I want to talk about is the Vikings. Now, Minnesota is got the bye this week, so you don't need to make this trade now. And Justin Jefferson's a stud. Probably not going to get much of Justin Jefferson. But Jordan Addison is someone I'm interested in possibly purchasing because after the bye, they have the Lions, which is ninth most fantasy points out wide, the Rams that are sixth, the Colts that are 11th, and the Jags that are first. So the Rams are an interesting one. They just shut down the Packers. They did shake up their secondary. I'm going to keep an eye on that matchup this week to see if the Rams changes are sticky. But the rest of that schedule is elite. And Jordan Addison could, after this bye week, he could really help you as a wide receiver 3 if you need someone to buy. If you get your hands on Justin Jefferson, great. Do it. But honestly, if you're 1-4, 0-5, you need a shot in the arm. Honestly, I know it's unfortunate that he has a bye this week, but Jordan Addison is someone you can go get pretty cheap. Next one's the Eagles. Now, AJ Brown, and if you're probably a 1-5, 0-5, 1-4 team. If you have AJ Brown because he only played one game, don't trade him. He's going to come out of this with a really good schedule. All his matchups over the next 5 weeks are in the top half of the NFL in fantasy points allowed out wide. Browns are 15th, Giants 10th, Bengals 12th, Jags first, Cowboys 17th. So Cowboys, of course, 17th, one spot behind. My apologies. I misspoke. Devonta Smith as well. He does play a lot in the slot now, so it is kind of a combination there. But either way, I think the Eagles, guys, if you can get your hands on them. And later in the episode, I will break down some guys that have really tough matchups that you could potentially trade away to acquire maybe some of these guys or package 2 guys, maybe even trading a stud who has a tough schedule to get 2 guys with really good schedules as well. All right, the next one's the Falcons. Now, Mooney and London are hot, but this is more of like, hey, these guys are going to stay hot. If you have them on your roster, keep them. Do not trade a Mooney high. He's going to be awesome. The Panthers are second. This week, they have the Panthers' second most fantasy points out wide. Then it's the Seahawks 14th, Bucks 6th, Cowboys 17th, Saints 13th. So really, really good schedule there for them. Now, both guys could be acquired. Mooney's probably someone that I have him in a couple leagues where I don't play him a lot because I picked him so late and I haven't put him in my lineups yet, but going to have to start doing that. I think he's emerging as a wide receiver 2 option and good matchup. So if you really need to trade away, if you need some depth, you want to trade away a better player, maybe like a DK Metcalf, which we'll break down in a second, drop down to Mooney, and then also acquire a solid RB2 in the trade. That's something we could explore as well. The final one, well, not the final one, but the next out wide matchup is the Giants. Malik Neighbors is the guy. Obviously, Darius Slayton played very well in his stead last week. The Giants have the Bengals 12th, Eagles 16th, Steelers are 22nd, Commanders 8th, and the Panthers 2nd. So some really, really winnable matchups other than that Steelers matchup for Malik Neighbors. And so because of the injury, if you're someone that, if the bet, this is a tough one. And honestly, I don't think this one really applies, to be honest. Now I'm thinking about it because if you're 1-4, 0-5, and the other team has Neighbors who's 4-1 or 3-2, I don't think they're going to trade you Neighbors unless you trade away a better player. But maybe you could no, I don't think so. Hey, listen, if you get your hands on Neighbors, great. I honestly, after breaking this one down, I don't think it's going to be tough to get him away from Anona right now. Commanders, Terry McLaurin. McLaurin has the Ravens 5th, Panthers 2nd, Bears 24th, Giants 10th, and Steelers 22nd. So 3 of the next 5 weeks are top 10 matchups. The Bears and Steelers are tough. So, I think this one is probably, I like McLaurin. It's probably more a short-term fix. I mean, 3 out of the next 4, he's got good matchups. So I think it's still valuable to go explore McLaurin trades because of his upcoming out wide schedule. But overall. Might be up and down after the first. Well, 3 of the next 4 pretty solid. Next slot. So here's some notable slot wide receivers: CeeDee Lamb, Jaden Reed, Keenan Allen. All 3 of these guys have really strong slot schedules. These guys are all primary slot guys. Lamb has the Lions and then a bye. Tough. Honestly, yeah, I don't think you're going to get your hands on Lamb because of the bye, and especially if you're 1-4, 0-5. Just breaking this down, trying to think through this, it's kind of like one of those things where it's going to be hard. Lamb hasn't performed like Lamb. So this might be a better trade for a better team, right? If you're 4-1 and the other team that's 1-4 has Lamb, it's worth an inquiry. Like, can I give you 2 players for Lamb? Because Lamb's schedule really opens up 4 top 11 matchups, 3 in the top 7 in the slot over the next 4 or 5 weeks with the bye. So might want to try to do it before the Lions game. Lions allow the most fantasy points to the slot. So PSA, I don't even think it's a buy low because I don't know if you're going to get a low. But if the team is 1-4, 0-5 that has Lamb or whatever, something like that, it's worth just saying, hey, I'll give you 2 guys for Lamb. What would it take? Because his price is a little bit lower than it was preseason. So definitely worth an ask because the schedule is really good. Jaden Reed, Cardinals 14th, Texans 15th, Jags 10th, and then he has the Lions that is first. So 4 really good matchups, couple injuries. Romeo Dobbs situation's a question mark. Wicks can't catch a cold. Got him. I was wrong about Reed. I'll admit that. I was wrong about Reed preseason. And so because of the Watson injury, Reed has been awesome. I think one of the part of these shows is like, and I didn't promote the Sunday Live. If you're watching this video and you're like, well, what do I trade for Reed? I'll break down some of the guys that have bad matchups, and some of them are studs, good players, that you could maybe trade Reed plus another player to get depth on your team if you're trying to turn your season around at 1-4, 0-5. But Reed's another guy I really like as well. But I'm going to pull up some running backs. I think 2 for 1 is usually the way to go. Running back, wide receiver. So obviously, when you're talking to these teams, they need to have depth. Everything we talk about is very situational. Pulling off trades is tough, but hopefully gives you some insight on what kind of players to target in your trades. Keenan Allen, this one, his value is very low. He's got the Jags that are 10th, then he has a bye. Then he has Commanders, Cardinals, and Patriots all in the top 14. And so his schedule is really good. It's just that he hasn't really done much yet this season. But Caleb, it looks like he's kind of found a little bit of a groove. So I think that Keenan Allen could be had on the cheap. So that's my mindset here, is like going out and acquire him, for relatively nothing. See how he does in that Jags matchup. And then you have the bye. And then you could probably start him with confidence the following few weeks because he has really good matchups. All right. Let's talk about potential trade away, guys. So I got Keon Coleman, which, Michael Pittman, who of course is now hurt, so this is irrelevant. Marvin Harrison, Alex Pierce, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Garrett Wilson, and Ladd McConkey. So let's start with Keon Coleman. Now, this one is more of like, hey, he caught a touchdown. There's some guys that will be open to trading. I think if you have Keon Coleman, he's got the Jets 31st in fantasy points out wide, the Titans 32nd, Seahawks 14th, Dolphins 28th, Colts 11th. 3 bottom 5 defense, bottom 4 defenses. No, bottom 5. Bottom 5 defenses over the next 5 weeks. In fantasy point, 5 toughest. So I should say bottom 5 toughest. Yeah, I don't. Maybe Keon Coleman for Keenan Allen makes sense. Those are always tough, the guy who drafted Keenan Allen's probably high on Keenan Allen, so it's hard to pry a guy away from a guy who drafted a player, but that's something that could be worth exploring. Running back wise, it's funny. I This is a wide receiver show. I do have metrics on the back end about um, who has like some really notable over the next 5 weeks. Let's see. Running backs. Guy that I really like, Rico Dowdle, is someone that I'm very interested in over the next five. He's got a pretty good schedule coming up and rest of season. Jalen Warren is someone that I like coming off injury. Najee hasn't really looked that explosive. He's someone you could probably get on the cheap. The rest of these guys are really good. Like Tank Bigsby's coming off a big game. Bijan, Devin Singletary is a good one as running backs that you could package that have really good upcoming schedules. But the Tyrone Trace situation might cause some hesitation. But I think Devin Singletary is still the guy there as well. All right. Just wanted to talk about some running backs just because, it's good to have an idea of, who has really good matchups. Like Bijan, it's hard to, if you are a, I don't think you can get, a Metcalf for Bijan. I don't think that, maybe. I don't think so. But anyway, let's move on. Michael Pittman, obviously, going to be hurt now. This is kind of moot conversation. But if you can unload him, his schedule's awful, right? The Titans 32nd, Dolphins 28th, Texans 20th, Vikings are a top 5, and then Bills 29th. So he's got a really brutal schedule over the next 5, but he's going to be out for a while anyway. I don't even know if you could sell him at this point, but you could plug him in your IR spot. But maybe if there's a really good team in your league that could stash Pittman, it's worth buying down to. Some of the guys we talked about. You're not going to get the McLaurin Neighbors types, but maybe like a Darnell Mooney, Jordan Addison type. Trading Pittman away if you're a 1-5, a 1-4 or 0-5 team. Pittman's not going to do you any good getting you to the playoffs over the next few weeks. So honestly, a Darnell Mooney for Pittman or Jordan Addison for Pittman might make sense for someone who is struggling right now. Next one's Marvin Harrison. He's got the Packers, which is good. That's a good matchup. Honestly, you probably should hold him for this week. Play him. After that, he's got the Chargers 26th in fantasy points allowed out wide, Dolphins 28th, Bears 24th, Jets 31st. So honestly, a Marvin Harrison blow-up game against the Packers in a really good game, which should be a good game, and then packaging him with another player, or trading him for guys like, Lamb's going to be on a bye, but if you could trade him and a player to get A.J. Brown or something, flipping him for a Drake London, for example, with other player, with a Singletary, if you need RB depth. That's something worth exploring if you're at 1-5, 1-4, 0-5. This is a win now. Let's get back at the playoff race trades. These are the trades over the next 5 weeks. And listen, if you have any questions about this stuff, make sure you come over on Sunday. We're doing our Sunday live start sit show for 2 hours before kickoff from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. PST or 11 or is it 11 to 1 on the East Coast. We do a 2-hour live start sit show. If you see this video and you want to come talk to me about and the rest of the team, you'll find on the Razzball Fantasy YouTube channel. Join us on Sunday. We'll break it down. We'll talk trades there as well. All right, let's talk about a DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Lockett doesn't have much value, but Metcalf, of course, does. Metcalf right now is the wide receiver. Let's see. Probably should have wrote down. Wide receiver 8 right now. This guy's packing a serious punch. He's got the 49ers that are 25th, Falcons 21st, Bills 29th. Then he's got the Rams, which will TBD on how good they are after this quote-unquote change. And then they have a bye. So if you're, like I said, if you're not doing well with Metcalf, honestly, I think packaging 2 for 1 to build up your roster, Metcalf packs a serious punch. Jaden Reed plus, Singletary could actually it's I don't know if I love that one. I wish there was really good. I wonder if you can get James Conner for him. I don't think you get James Conner plus Maybe Swift. Swift's hot right now. Maybe Swift plus Reed. I don't even think that works. Man, the running back landscape is tough. There's really all the studs have really good matchups over the next 5 weeks. That really throws a wrench. I like Rico Dowdle, but Rico Dowdle plus, maybe Raheem Mostert plus Reed for Metcalf, um, or Devonta Smith, those kind of guys. I like getting some value 2-for-1 for Metcalf right now if you're a 1-4, 0-5 team, because Metcalf's schedule gets tight, and of course he has the 5th week bye. The next one hurts. And by the way, this conversation is for 0-5, 1-4, 2-3 teams. If you're 4-1, this is not for you. Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson's upcoming schedule is brutal again. He had 1 week where he had the Vikings and he went off. He did exactly what he was supposed to do. Then but this week's got the Bills 29th, Steelers 22nd, Patriots 19th, Texans 20th, Cardinals 18th. No top 16 matchups out wide over the next 5 weeks. So if you're a team that's struggling, honestly, Darnell Mooney plus Rico Dowdle. That sounds horrible when I say it. That sounds so bad. Oh, shit. I don't even like that. I don't know. Oh, yeah. Maybe, maybe Devonta Smith and Mooney. Yeah, maybe that. I wonder if you can get that. Leave a comment. Let me know. Let me know how some of these conversations go. I would be very curious. I have Garrett Wilson. I'm going to try to sprinkle around some of these trade offers. The running backs are just too good that have really good schedules. Like all the studs have really good schedules. Honestly, the Devin Singletary, Rico Dowdle are the 2 guys that come to mind. But maybe Najee Harris has but Najee looked plotting. Maybe Jalen Warren, but Warren doesn't have any value right now. So maybe like Devonta Smith, Jalen Warren, for Garrett Wilson if you're a really struggling team, because I don't think you're going to get any of the other guys we talked about. Maybe Jaden Reed plus Singletary plus Dowdle plus Najee Harris plus DeAndre Swift that should get the deal done, but it doesn't feel great. I don't like to sell low, but I mean, maybe you forget schedule for a minute and focus on the player themselves. And so the running backs that might be better suited for a 2-for-1, maybe, Josh Jacobs plus one of those receivers. I don't even think Josh Jacobs, I'm going to give him up. Tony Pollard, maybe. Like Singletary, Harris, Pollard, Dowdle, all bunched together, right in the top 30 range. Maybe Ramondre Stevenson plus insert one of those guys, Reed. I'm curious if that works. Let me know in the comments. I'm very curious. We're all spitballing here. These are just guys that have tough matchups. If you're a struggling team, time to unload. Let me know what you guys get for these guys, or bring it to the Sunday live show for 2 hours on the Razzball Fantasy YouTube channel. All right, the last one's Ladd McConkey coming off the bye. He's more of a slot guy. His slot schedule, he's got the Broncos 32nd, Cardinals 14th, Saints 19th, Browns 22nd, Titans 23rd. And so, his schedule gets really tough. He's got some value, Ladd. Let's see, PPR right now, McConkey is, come on. What do we want to do? PPR points per game. Where are you, Ladd? 46. Gross. What would be a good Ladd McConkey trade? He's 11 points a game. Our wide receiver 46. Good question. I do not have the answer for it. I really like Dobbs as a pickup, by the way. I'm just trying to spitball ideas here, but I think those running backs like Rico Dowdle. There you go. If you trade Rico Dowdle, acquire Rico Dowdle for Ladd. As you notice, I'm kind of into Rico Dowdle. I have him in 0 leagues, so that's fun. I might have him in 1, actually. I might have him in 1 league. Not really sure. But yeah, that's really it. So let's do a quick rundown. So the buys in the slot versus wide over the next 5 weeks, if you're a struggling team, the Vikings receivers, Eagles, Falcons, Giants, Commanders out wide. In the slot, we like Lamb, Jaden Reed, Keenan Allen as buys. Potential trade away, guys with tough out wide schedules. Keon Coleman, Michael Pittman, Alex Pierce, Marvin Harrison, DK Metcalf, and Lockett. Tough and Garrett Wilson. And then, of course, slot is Lad McConkey. Now, that's a lot of information. And honestly, I like the fact that bringing this to the table. Here's the players. Let's talk all of us as a community to figure out like what trades are going to work. I'm a big Garrett Wilson guy. That's like the one guy of the list that I have a lot of. And I'm going to, start asking to see what I can pull for him, especially because my one league, well, I'm 2 for 2 and 3, which I'm not completely out of, but that's like the one league where I don't have a winning record. So I'm interested to see what I could get for Garrett Wilson right now, coming off that really good Vikings game and a really tough upcoming schedule. Maybe a Rico Dowdle. I don't even think you get Jaden Reed, but Rico Dowdle plus, man, does Dowdle and Mooney? I mean, like Mooney, maybe I don't even know what Mooney. I already have Mooney on that team, so it doesn't even matter. But I wonder if Rico Dowdle, Devonta Smith for Garrett Wilson gets it done. Please go do it. I'm going to try to see if a team has it. But if you're in a league that a team has Rico Dowdle, Devonta Smith, offer them Garrett Wilson if you're 1-4, 0-5. Let me know how that goes. But that's all we got. This was recorded, by the way. I didn't even go live because the waiver wire guys had to take a day off yesterday and they recorded today. So that's right. I'm recording a rant right now and I'm going to post it anyway. There's going to be no editing to this puppy. It is what it is. Enjoy the slot versus wide rest of season schedule, a few takeaways, but leave a comment and let us know your thoughts about what trades you're looking to acquire. Let us know about the trades that you got using the guys we talked about today, and join us on the Sunday Live Start Sit Show. We're going to be live for 2 hours before kickoff every single Sunday for you guys, answering your start sit questions, talking about injuries, everything you need to know up until kickoff. And of course, make sure you jump over to razzball.com. We're doing fantastic work over there. Great writers across the board. We have fantastic tools. And make sure you go check out the slot versus wide points per game allowed tool over on razzball.com. Once again, I'm your host, Bobby Lamarco. Thank you for joining me once again on the Razzball Fantasy YouTube channel. We are out of here, folks.